Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to the Stink Bug Works. You know all the details about how super secret it is. I want to talk to all you folks that are looking at building your single-stepped foam hydroplane. What I want to talk about today is joining the hull pieces, the upper and lower piece, how I do that, and then how I achieve this. I use this expanding polyurethane glue. This product is really similar to the spray foam in that it acts the same. It foams up into a hard foam, and that's what this does. Water will help activate this. So I'm going to join these two halves. You notice how it's rough here from the hot wire? Don't worry about that. When I put the plastic on here, the foam will fill up all the imperfections in there and work just fine. So before we glue these things together, I'm going to want to be taping this off so the glue doesn't expand into the inside of the boat and make a mess that I have to clean out later. I'd rather expand on the outside of the boat, and I can scrape some of it off. In fact, that's where this came from. I can scrape some of it off as it sets up. The first thing, though, is gesso. Gesso is nothing more than thinned out white glue. It's the consistency of heavy cream, you know. So if you can't find gesso, you can just take Elmer's glue and thin that stuff out with some water that you can put it on with a paintbrush. And I painted the inside here for two reasons. Once the model's all done and covered, you're going to want to paint it because the covering is water-based. And if you're out in the water with water-based covering, something's going to dissolve. So you want to coat it with spray paint. Unfortunately, spray paint, the volatile chemicals in it will dissolve this foam. So a coating of gesso on everything exposed, the exposed foam, everything exposed, will help prevent that. The other secret is when you're spraying it, just a real light coat on the exposed area, let it dry, another light coat, and call it good. Or, since we're going to cover this in paper mache, you could actually, where I've put the gesso on here, you could probably put some paper in here right now and paint it on. I might try that on a future build and paper this whole inside just to give it a protective wall. We'll see. Maybe that's more work than necessary. Anyway, so I've put gesso on here, and you see this side is still real porous, and it's going to be, a challenge to get the tape to stick because that glue is going to go everywhere. But we'll do our best to try to minimize how much is going in there. But you can see there's some big gaping holes where it's going to come in. Now, I said water helps activate this stuff, so I always, hit it with just a little bit of water before I apply some glue. And then this glue, a little goes a long ways. And so I'm going to just put a little in here, and I want to stay kind of close to the inner edge so I get a good fill on the, put some in that hole there, and just a little bit of this glue goes a long ways. You'd be surprised how it foams up and fills up. So I'm trying to get a fairly even layer of glue here, kind of the same amount of glue per square inch. And that already may be too much. But fortunate thing is, as it's curing out, you can scrape it off. So I've got this much glue on here. Let's stick this on and kind of get it about the right spot. And here's why I put the gesso on, so I can get everything kind of sealed up here on the inside as best I can, because it's going to make a mess. This stuff goes everywhere. You can see it's starting to foam up already. And try to seal this up as best we can. It's not going to be perfect, but if we can limit the amount of foam we have getting into everything, the better. You know what's happening? The moisture that I put on to set off the glue is preventing this particular brand of tape from sticking. That is not good. So maybe I should have used the green tape that is primarily intended for lacquer. Anyway, that's going to stop a lot of the glue. There's still going to be some coming out like that. There's nothing you can do about that, which is why I'm adding another sheet of waxed paper before I put on my clamp. This is actually what I use to clamp guitar bodies down onto the bass when I have them on the drill press or something. And never throw out old dead gel cell batteries. They make great glue weights. Now what's going to happen is this foam is going to come out of the sides here. You can see it's starting to come out here, and as it does, you know, after a while, there's going to be a whole bunch of it, and I'll come in with a stir stick, and I'll scrape off some of that and put it into this used epoxy cup, and that way I won't have so much to sand off. This stuff is much harder than the blue stuff, so you got to be careful sanding it. Oh, one other thing I failed to mention. When you are selecting your bottom piece, make sure that you get the right angle, the 90 degree, this way. I'll show you what I mean here. It is possible to have your step 90 degrees or your step sloping forward or your step at 90 degrees. Make sure you get the 90 degree edge on the glue side. once they're glued together, if you're fortunate enough to have an oscillating belt sander that you can just go along, well then you don't need this. But what I've done is just take two boards, put them together, and use that stick-on sandpaper and make you a nice little 90-degree sanding block. And that way you can get a good 90-degree edge here. That's important because later on, as you're shaping and such, it'll give you a good reference point. You know, and part of the reason I did it was, remember the Prototype 1 had a flat side here for a while for the covering. Anyway, so there is your basic hull. I mean, the hull's done. It's two pieces. I glued together two pieces of foam and sanded them, and my hull is done. We'll talk about that next step, putting on the plastic. The plastic, it's this stuff. This is the plastic, and quite frankly, it's real easy to work with. You can cut nice little shapes out of it, you know, and so you don't need anything sophisticated to deal with it. It's cheap. This stuff holds it like nobody's business, and so I think I've done enough damage. I've shown you after gluing, how to gluing, and how to rough sanding to shape. What'll happen is I'm going to take my nice big flat sanding block. I'll just go over the surfaces lightly, and then using the same process, I will first glue on the aft piece, and I'll use this as my gluing bench. I like a piece of glass just because if glue gets on it, you can razor blade it off, and it's really flat and it's convenient. But because of this step, I'm going to just put some wax paper here and weight this down here. Now the back step has to go first, and then you'll put that inside doubler across here that will tie that backside in here. Then you'll do this piece, and finally this bottom. I'm going to save this bottom till later because I have a fixture where I can take this part of the hull plus the hatch, put it in, and hot wire a curve across the entire thing, and it's indexed on this. So I'm going to save the main ride pad till last, you know, as far as getting the exterior shape. I'm not going to sand anything until everything's all glued up, but that will give me my final shape. So I think I've touched on just about everything. Oh, I haven't touched on this. I'm going to focus for my build on this powertrain and see where it gets me. A little bit of experimenting. I had an H&M coupler that went from 3.2 millimeters to 2 millimeters, and it fit perfectly on this shaft. This shaft has a tiny little step in it halfway up here, and it stops right on that outer step right there. And so it fits perfectly on this with no wobble. And so I think I'm going to use a 2 millimeter drive. I can find 2 millimeter inside diameter ball bearings. They're a dime a dozen. I can find TFL makes a 2mm drive shaft with a M2 thread on the end that will fit the propellers that Steve at OSE sells, or H&M has a 2mm shaft with a 4mm threaded end on it that would also work with the same 2mm ball bearings. And so it'll be real easy to set this up on a 2mm ball bearing shaft. I've got a couple other boats in my fleet using that drive system right now that I haven't shown you yet, but I will. Okay, well, I think that just about sums everything up. Until next time, jet out. Okay, tubers, I'm back for a postscript. It's been a couple of minutes now, and my expanding glue is beginning to work, and because I had problems with the tape sticking, I decided I'd open it up to see, and sure enough, I was getting some escaping glue. We can't allow any escapes here. So I thought I'd go in and reset my tape here. And it's probably a good time that I could come in here and start getting rid of some of this excess stuff, that, especially right here. I don't want to have to sand that off. It's much easier to cut it off right now. And you can see how it's foaming up around here. You could trim a lot of it off. Or I guess in my case, just spread it thin to make it easy to sand. Yeah, I guess I should have done this about 5 minutes ago. Anyway, that'll still make it much easier to sand out. Now, while the glue is still cooking off and I've cleaned up, it'll still expand and make a mess, but it's just not going to be as much as it could have been. Now I've sort of redone everything. And now the glue is still a little bit plastic, so I could move things just a little bit, but the glue is getting to the point where it's going to become hard. So if you do what I just did, make adjustments, do it while the glue is still plastic. Okay, I think I've touched everything, so that's how you get to this stage and get this glued on. Well, I'll show you this part too. This won't be too difficult. It's just going to be glued on here and call it good. Okay, fellow single-step hydro builders, until next time, jet out.